My husband locked me in the attic while his family celebrated downstairs, saying, "Crazy wives belong in crazy places." But I recorded everything and made them all famous. Welcome back, family. If you haven't already, subscribe and say hi in the comments. We'd love to know where you're watching from. With that, let's continue today's story. My name is Suzanne Marshall and I'm 32 years old. What I'm about to tell you will sound like fiction, but every word is true and I have the receipts to prove it. It started on Edward's birthday, his 35th. His family was coming over for what I thought would be a normal celebration. I'd spent 3 days cooking his favorite meals: honey-glazed ham, mac and cheese from scratch, cornbread that could make angels weep, and a 3-layer German chocolate cake that took me 6 hours to perfect. "Baby, this looks incredible," Edward said that morning, sampling the frosting with his finger. "Mama's gonna be so impressed." His mother, Anita, had never liked me. 5 years of marriage and she still introduced me as Edward's friend at church functions. But I kept trying, kept hoping that one day she'd see me as family. The guests started arriving around 2 p.m. Edward's younger brother Patrick showed up with his wife Tiffany, followed by his sister Denise and her teenage kids. Last came Anita, wearing that tight smile she reserved just for me. "Suzanne," she said, air kissing my cheek. "The house smells interesting." I forced a smile. "Thanks, Mrs. Marshall. Everything should be ready in about an hour." "That's Miss Johnson now," she corrected. I took my maiden name back after the divorce was finalized. News to me, but I nodded politely. The first red flag should have been how they all kept checking their phones and whispering. The second was when Edward suggested I go check on something upstairs, right as I was about to serve dinner. "What do you need me to check?" I asked Edward, balancing serving spoons in both hands. The dining room was filled with the warm chatter of his family, and I was finally feeling like maybe today would be different. "Just the guest bathroom. I think the faucet's dripping again," he said, not meeting my eyes. "You know how it gets." I knew that faucet was fine. I'd checked it that morning. But I wanted to keep the peace, especially with his mother watching our every interaction like a hawk studying prey. "All right, but help me get the food out first," I said. "Nah, go ahead." "We can wait," Patrick chimed in, which was strange. Patrick never waited for anything, especially food. Walking upstairs, I noticed how quiet the house had gotten. No more laughter, no more conversation. Just silence that made my skin crawl. The guest bathroom was exactly as I'd left it. Perfect, no dripping. That's when I heard the footsteps behind me. "Edward." I called out, turning toward our bedroom. But it wasn't Edward standing in the hallway. It was Patrick and Denise blocking my path to the stairs. Both had expressions I'd never seen before: cold, determined. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice smaller than I intended. "Family business," Denise said simply. Before I could process what that meant, Edward appeared at the top of the stairs, holding something that made my blood run cold: the key to the attic door. "Suzanne, we need to talk," he said, but his voice carried none of its usual warmth. The hallway suddenly felt like it was shrinking. 3 people I'd called family for 5 years were now standing between me and my freedom. "Talk about what?" I demanded, but my voice cracked. Something was horribly wrong and every instinct screamed at me to run. Edward stepped closer, and for the first time in our marriage I felt afraid of my own husband. "We've all been discussing your situation." "What situation?" But even as I asked, I was backing away from them, toward the end of the hall where the attic door waited like a hungry mouth. "Your mental health," Denise said, crossing her arms. "The way you've been acting lately. The paranoia, the accusations about Mama not liking you." "That's not paranoia, that's reality," I shot back. "And what accusations?" Patrick pulled out his phone and started recording. "See? There she goes again. Getting defensive, raising her voice." "I'm not." I stopped myself, realizing they were baiting me. Every word I said was being twisted, weaponized. Edward held up the attic key like it was a solution to all their problems. "The family thinks you need some time to cool down. To think about how you've been treating everyone. You want to lock me in the attic?" The words came out as a whisper because surely I'd misunderstood. Surely the man I'd shared a bed with for 5 years wasn't suggesting imprisoning me in our own home. "It's not imprisonment," Anita's voice floated up from the bottom of the stairs. "It's intervention. Crazy wives belong in crazy places until they learn to act right." The casual cruelty in her tone hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't spontaneous, they'd planned this. Discussed it. Decided together that I was the problem that needed solving. You're all out of your minds, I said, reaching for my phone. That's when Patrick lunged forward and snatched it from my hands. Give me my phone back, I shouted, but Patrick was already handing it to Edward. You won't be needing this for a while, Edward said, powering it down. This is for your own good, Suzanne. You'll see that once you calm down. I looked at each of their faces. People I'd cooked for laughed with trusted. Denise, who I'd helped through her divorce. Patrick, whose kids called me Auntie Suzanne. And Edward, who'd promised to love and protect me. This is kidnapping, I said, my voice steady despite the terror clawing at my chest. You can't just lock someone up because you don't like their attitude. It's not kidnapping when it's your own house, Anita called from downstairs, and I heard the others laugh. Shilly laugh. Edward opened the attic door. The wooden stairs creaked ominously in the darkness above. Go up, Suzanne. We'll bring you some food later. No. The word came out stronger than I felt. I'm not going up there. Then we'll help you, Patrick said, stepping toward me. That's when training kicked in. My father had been a security guard for 20 years, and he taught me never to go to a second location willingly. If someone's trying to move you, he'd said, that's where the real danger begins. I ran. Not toward the stairs where Anita waited, but toward our bedroom window. If I could get outside, I could scream, get neighbors involved, call the police. But Denise tackled me before I made it 3 steps. Actually tackled me like we were playing football, sending us both crashing into the hallway wall. Get off me, I screamed, fighting to break free. That's when Edward grabbed my arms and Patrick grabbed my legs. They carried me up those attic stairs like I weighed nothing, my protests echoing in the dusty space above. The attic was exactly as horrifying as I remembered. Low ceiling, cobwebs in every corner, and one small window that barely let in any light. Edward, please, I begged as they set me down on the wooden floor. Don't do this. We can talk about whatever's bothering you. We can go to counseling. He looked at me with something that might have been pity. You should have thought about that before you started causing problems for this family. What problems? When have I ever? Always questioning Mama's decisions, Denise interrupted. Acting like you know better than everyone. Complaining about family traditions, Patrick added. Making Edward choose between you and his blood, Anita's voice carried up from below. I stared at my husband, searching his face for any sign of the man I'd fallen in love with. When did I ever make you choose? Edward wouldn't meet my eyes. You know what you did. But I didn't. That was the terrifying part. I genuinely had no idea what had triggered this coordinated attack on my sanity and freedom. There's a bucket in the corner, Denise said matter-of-factly. And we'll bring water and crackers later. A bucket. They expected me to use a bucket like some kind of animal. How long are you planning to keep me up here? I asked. Edward finally looked at me. Until you're ready to apologize and mean it. Apologize for what? He turned away. You know. And then they left. All of them. The attic door slammed shut and I heard the key turn in the lock. I sat in that attic for what felt like hours, listening to them laugh and celebrate downstairs. My birthday dinner, the one I'd spent 3 days preparing, was being eaten without me. They were probably telling stories about how crazy Suzanne finally got what she deserved. The rage started small like a match in my chest. But as the sun began to set and that tiny window grew dark, it blazed into something fiercer. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the problem. And I damn sure wasn't going to sit up here like some Victorian madwoman while they painted me as the villain. That's when I remembered the old iPad. 6 months ago, Edward had been cleaning out boxes of electronics and asked if we should throw away his old first-generation iPad. It's slow as molasses, he'd said, but it still works. I'd suggested we keep it up here for emergencies. Maybe if we ever got snowed in we could download movies or something. He'd laughed at my doomsday prepping, but tossed it on the old bookshelf anyway. My hands shook as I felt around in the darkness, knocking over boxes and disturbing years of accumulated dust. Finally, my fingers closed around the familiar rectangle of glass and metal. Please work, I prayed, holding down the power button. The Apple logo glowed like a beacon of hope. It was slow, painfully slow, but it connected to our Wi-Fi. Edward had never changed the password. SU Marshall 2019, the year we bought the house. I opened the camera app first, recording a quick video of my surroundings. My name is Suzanne Marshall, I whispered to the screen. "It's approximately 8 p.m. on October 15th. My husband and his family have locked me in my own attic." But that was just the beginning. The iPad's battery was at 60%, enough for what I needed to do. I started documenting everything. The locked door, the bucket they'd left me, the complete absence of proper lighting or ventilation. Then I opened the voice recording app and started talking. "I'm going to tell you exactly what led to this moment," I whispered, "because I'm starting to think this was planned long before today." The memories came flooding back as I spoke. 3 weeks ago, Anita had casually asked Edward about our financial situation during Sunday dinner. When I'd mentioned that we were doing fine, she'd given me that look, like I'd spoken out of turn. 2 weeks ago, Patrick had made a joke about wives who don't know their place, while we were all watching football. When I'd called it sexist, the whole room had gone quiet. Last week, Denise had suggested I might benefit from talking to someone about my attitude problems. When I'd asked what she meant, Edward had quickly changed the subject. They'd been building a case against me, gathering evidence of my supposed mental instability, creating a narrative where locking me away seemed reasonable, even necessary. I recorded everything I could remember, then opened Facebook. If they wanted to play games with my reputation, I'd show them how the internet really worked. But before I could post anything, I heard voices getting louder downstairs. They were arguing about something, and one voice was rising above the rest. A voice I didn't recognize. I pressed my ear to the attic floor and listened. "Told you this was a bad idea," the unfamiliar voice was saying. "What if she calls the police?" "She doesn't have her phone," Edward replied. "But what if the neighbors heard her screaming?" My heart started racing. Someone else was there. Someone who hadn't been part of the original plan. "Who is that?" I whispered to the iPad, still recording. The voice belonged to a woman, but it wasn't Tiffany or anyone else I recognized from the family. I crept closer to the attic door and pressed my ear against the wood. "Called you because we needed backup," Anita was saying. "Suzanne's been getting more and more unstable." "Unstable enough to justify false imprisonment?" The unknown woman shot back. "Because that's what this is, and you all know it." "She's family," Edward said. "We're trying to help her. By locking her in an attic like some kind of prisoner? Are you hearing yourselves right now?" I felt a spark of hope. Whoever this woman was, she wasn't buying their story. "Stay out of it, Carmen," Patrick warned. "This doesn't concern you." Carmen. The name was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Then it hit me. Carmen Rodriguez, Edward's co-worker from the hospital. She was a nurse in the same department where he worked as a radiology technician. "It concerns me when you call me over here claiming there's a family emergency, and I find out you've lost your damn minds," Carmen said. "Where is she?" "Upstairs," Denise said quietly. "She needed some time to cool down." "Show me." My heart hammered as I heard footsteps on the stairs. This was it. Either Carmen would see through their lies, or she'd join their twisted intervention. The footsteps stopped right outside the attic door. "Suzanne." Carmen called softly. "Are you okay in there?" I made a split-second decision that would change everything. Instead of answering immediately, I held up the iPad and started recording again. "Carmen, is that you?" I called out. "Honey, are you hurt?" "They locked me up here because they think I'm crazy," I said, loud enough for the iPad to pick up clearly. "I've been trapped for hours." The silence that followed was deafening. "Open this door right now," Carmen's voice cut through the silence like a blade. I could hear the fury building in her tone. "Carmen, you don't understand," Edward started. "I understand perfectly. You've imprisoned your wife in your attic, and you called me over here to witness whatever sick justification you've cooked up." "She's been having episodes," Anita chimed in. "Paranoid thoughts, angry outbursts. So you locked her away like some kind of mental patient? What is wrong with you people?" I pressed the iPad closer to the door, making sure every word was being captured. This was exactly what I needed, an unbiased witness seeing through their manipulation. "Let me out, Carmen," I called. "Please." "Edward, give me the key," Carmen demanded. "I can't do that," Edward replied. "She needs to calm down first. She needs to call the police is what she needs to do. This is kidnapping, false imprisonment, and probably a dozen other crimes I can't even think of right now." That's when Anita played her trump card. "Carmen dear, I know you mean well, but you don't live with her day in and day out. You don't see how she treats Edward, how she disrespects this family. I see how this family treats her, Carmen shot back. I've seen it every time you come to the hospital. The way you talk about her, the way you act like she doesn't exist. And now this. You're being dramatic, Patrick said. Dramatic? Dramatic. Carmen's voice rose to a near shout. You want to see dramatic? Wait until I call 911 and explain that I found a woman locked in an attic by her own husband and his family. That's when everything changed. You're not calling anyone, Edward said, and his voice had gone cold. Excuse me. I said you're not calling anyone. Not until we figure this out. The silence stretched so long I wondered if they'd all left. Then Carmen spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Are you threatening me, Edward? Nobody's threatening anybody, Anita said smoothly. We're all family here. We just need to handle this situation quietly. Family. Carmen laughed, but there was no humor in it. Lady, I barely know you people. Edward is my coworker, not my family, and what you're doing here is insane. I heard movement, shuffling feet, whispered voices. They were positioning themselves, blocking exits. My blood ran cold as I realized Carmen had just walked into the same trap they'd set for me. Here's what's going to happen, Anita continued, her voice taking on that same casual cruelty I'd heard earlier. You're going to sit downstairs with us, have some cake, and forget you ever saw anything unusual tonight. And if I don't? Then you'll be staying here a little longer than planned, Patrick answered. Carmen's sharp intake of breath was audible even through the attic door. You people are completely out of your minds. That's when I heard something that made my skin crawl. The sound of the attic key being turned. Not to let me out, but to lock Carmen in with me. No, no, no. Carmen's voice was cut off by scuffling sounds, then heavy footsteps on the attic stairs. They were bringing her up. I quickly hid the iPad under a dusty tarp and positioned myself near the small window, pretending I'd been trying to escape that way. The attic door burst open and Patrick shoved Carmen inside so hard she stumbled and fell to her knees. She looked up at me with wide, terrified eyes. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I tried to help. It's not your fault, I whispered back as the door slammed shut again. We were both trapped now. But what they didn't know was that I had hours of audio recorded on that iPad, including Carmen's genuine shock at discovering their crime. And more importantly, I had a witness. How long have they had you up here? Carmen asked, examining the bucket with disgust. Since around 6, I whispered, checking the iPad's battery life. 40% remaining. But I think they've been planning this for weeks. I filled her in quickly. The strange comments, the coordinated intervention, the casual way they'd discussed locking me away like it was perfectly normal. This is beyond sick, Carmen said. And Edward seems so normal at work. Quiet, professional. I never would have guessed that he was capable of this. I finished. Neither did I. We sat in the darkness for a moment, both processing the situation. Then Carmen asked the question I'd been dreading. What's our play here? Because they're not going to just let us go. I pulled out the iPad and showed her the recordings. I've been documenting everything. Every conversation, every threat. It's all here. Carmen's eyes widened as she scrolled through hours of audio and video files. Suzanne, this is brilliant. But how do we get it to the authorities? That's when I smiled for the first time all day. Edward forgot something when he took my phone. The iPad has cellular data. I'd been saving our data plan for emergencies, and this definitely qualified. Within minutes, I'd uploaded everything to cloud storage and sent copies to my sister in California, my best friend from college, and my father. But that was just the beginning. What are you doing now? Carmen asked as I opened social media apps. Going nuclear, I replied, starting to type. They want to make me famous for being crazy? Let's see how they like being famous for being criminals. The Facebook post was simple but devastating. Help. My husband and his family have locked me and a witness in our attic. Recording everything. If something happens to us, you'll know who did it. I tagged our location, included photos of our prison, and posted the audio recordings. Then I shared it to every local community group, news station, and justice page I could find. Within minutes, the notifications started pouring in. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Comments flooded in faster than I could read them. I'm calling the police right now. What's your address? I'm coming over. This is in my neighborhood. I can be there in 10 minutes. Shared to all my pages. This is insane. Carmen watched over my shoulder as the post started getting shared hundreds, then thousands of times. How are they not hearing all these notifications? The iPad's on silent, I explained, but they're about to find out anyway. Sure enough, we heard car doors slamming outside. Then voices. Multiple voices. Angry voices. What the hell is going on out there? Patrick's voice drifted up from downstairs. I don't know, but there are cars everywhere, Denise replied. Then came the sound I'd been praying for, heavy knocking on the front door. Police. Open up. The silence from downstairs was deafening. Then we heard frantic whispering followed by Edward shouting, "Coming. Just a minute." "This is it," I whispered to Carmen, holding up the iPad. "Whatever happens next, it's all being recorded." Through the tiny attic window, I could see the street was lined with police cars, news vans, and neighbors holding cell phones. The story had exploded beyond anything I could have imagined. My phone, Edward's phone, actually started buzzing with notifications. The cellular data was pinging location services, and every major news outlet in the city was picking up the story. Breaking. Local woman live tweets her own kidnapping. Viral video. Family locks woman in attic, gets exposed online. Exclusive. Attic prisoner speaks out in real time. Downstairs, I heard Edward trying to explain to the police that this was all a misunderstanding. But the evidence spoke for itself. 2 women locked in an attic, hours of recorded evidence, and thousands of witnesses watching in real time. The officer's response was immediate and decisive. "Sir, step away from the door. We need those keys right now." The attic door flew open and sunlight streamed in from the hallway below. I'd never been so happy to see a police officer in my life. "Ma'am, are you injured?" Officer Martinez asked, helping me down the narrow stairs. "Physically, no," I said, clutching the iPad like a lifeline. "But I have everything recorded. Every threat, every admission of guilt." The scene downstairs was chaos. Edward sat in handcuffs on our couch, staring at his feet. Anita was arguing loudly with another officer about family business and misunderstandings. Patrick and Denise flanked the dining room table, looking like they'd seen a ghost. Mrs. Marshall, Detective Santos approached with a notepad. "We're going to need your full statement, but first, are you safe to stay here tonight?" "Hell no," I said immediately. "I'm never setting foot in this house again." Carmen stepped up beside me. "She can stay with me as long as needed." As the police processed the scene, my phone, my actual phone which they'd returned, exploded with messages. News stations wanted interviews. Lawyers were offering their services pro bono. Women's rights organizations were calling me a hero. But the message that mattered most came from my sister. "Pac got your videos. Flying out tomorrow. So proud of you for fighting back." The final twist came when Detective Santos pulled me aside. "Mrs. Marshall, we found something interesting in your husband's browser history. Searches for legal ways to have wife committed, and proving someone is mentally incompetent." The plan had been bigger than just one night in the attic. They'd been researching ways to have me permanently removed from my own life. "There's more," the detective continued. "We found email threads between your husband and his family discussing your situation, going back 3 months. They were planning this for a long time." As they led Edward away in handcuffs, he finally looked at me. "I was trying to help you," he said. "No," I replied, standing straighter than I had in years. "You were trying to control me. But I helped myself." The story went viral worldwide. Within a week, I had book deals, speaking engagements, and more support than I'd ever imagined. Most importantly, I had my freedom and my voice back. Edward and his family faced multiple felony charges. The evidence was overwhelming. Not just my recordings, but hundreds of thousands of witnesses who'd watched the story unfold in real time. As for me, I learned that sometimes the person who's supposed to protect you is the one you most need protection from. But I also learned that even in your darkest moment, locked away and forgotten, you still have power. You just have to be brave enough to use it.